right, welcome back. This is the Coach Mo Golf Show, Season 3, Episode 9, and I am really excited today. I have a junior player development specialist, Stuart McKechnie, on the show. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. He is PGA, TPI certified, has been coaching over 10 years, and once he starts talking, you're going to know he's originally from Scotland. He has just been recently named a Golf Digest Best Young Teacher in America. And what he is certified in, which we're going to talk a lot about today on the show, is he is TPI, level 3 in golf, level 2 in juniors, and power. So Stuart, owner of Phenom Golf Lab up in Charlotte. Super excited to have you on the show. So thanks for spending some time here today to talk to us about junior golf development.
Yep. Thanks, Mo. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to kind of talk about all things junior golf with yourself. Obviously, you're passionate about that as well. So, yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, and Stuart and I got connected a few years ago, I guess via Instagram, right? Or chit
Yeah.
chat and commenting on, but definitely have a similar passion in developing juniors. And throughout the years, I had Stuart on the not before I had the podcast, I had my students. I'd bring on a special guest and mentor, and Stuart was so kind to come on and talk to my students a few years ago, and just we've been back and forth on junior golf development stuff, and so it's really cool to see that you have your own facility up in Charlotte. And one of the things I want to start off with is, junior golf, and a lot of people listening to this episode might be junior players, might be parents. I actually have a lot of college coaches that listen, and they text me and write me, and they're like, "I'm so happy you're doing this," because there's a lot of kids and parents who don't know out there, and they're underprepared when they're heading to college, and so this kind of stuff is a great resource for them. If you don't mind just starting off like that pathway for junior golfers, one of your specialties, how does one kind of get started with you, and what does that beginning journey look like?
Obviously it's a big golf is a big commitment. It's expensive. It's a lifetime sport, which is why I think it's great. But nowadays, a lot of parents are they're unsure where to start, and it's getting harder and harder because golfers are getting better and better at younger ages. So I am still a big proponent that kids at a young age especially should be playing multiple sports. Um, Especially when they're like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, they should be playing as many sports as possible. Because I see it too often that there's a lot of juniors and all they do is golf like every day of the week. And they're good golfers, really good golfers at a young age, but unfortunately they're not athletic. And then that catches up with them when they're teenagers. So kind of looking at the pathway, I would definitely say, as hard as it is for parents, you don't want to be trying to get ahead of the game early because ultimately it's going to catch up in one way or another. So you should definitely be starting kind of younger age. You can introduce golf. And then as their passion grows for it, when they're a little bit older, then they can start to specialize in it more. But yeah, definitely
Yeah.
multiple sports to start.
Yeah, and when you're kind of to go a little more deeper into that, but when you're talking about like a non-athlete and an athlete, I think parents think like, oh, I signed up my son or daughter for golf, now they're an athlete. And I think more what we're referring to is, they're playing a lot more agility sports, they're running, jumping. There's basketball, soccer, football, baseball, all these other different sports, different movement patterns. And it's good for the kids to be introduced to that. One, like you said, there's not going to be burnout. They're not starting at 7 years old, and this is the only sport they're playing for many years down the road. But also, their movement patterns and different muscle groups are getting engaged. They're learning how to access them, and those are really important to golf. Like you said, talk to that, like coaching a non-athlete beginner golfer and then an athlete beginner golfer. There's a huge difference in how quickly they seem to develop. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Because yeah, you can see kids that have played multiple sports, they're also easily coachable because they've kind of been in coaching settings, so they can adapt pretty quickly. their mechanics might be awful to begin, but they quickly catch on just because of the other sports that they've done. Um, Whereas you see kids that kind of, it's just golf, it may take them a lot longer just to kind of learn the technique. So as much as you think other sports is kind of you're losing time for golf development, you're actually not. They're getting better whether they're doing golf or not.
Yeah. What's your opinion on that? Like, why is it that a not like someone who hasn't played other sports, when they pick up a golf club, it just seems to be so much more challenging? Like, do you think, I mean, if I was just, out of my own opinions, I think it's just golf requires, there's a lot of thinking, and I think the thinking can be very crippling. But I think when you're playing these other reactive sports, you're reacting to the situation. So, in my opinion, I mean, I have no stats or anything to back that up, but I think like you're just standing over the ball trying to figure out like how to move your body, what to do, a lot of thoughts. But like if you're playing like baseball, soccer, basketball, you're reacting to the situation. So I don't think you have the time necessarily to overthink. I don't know if there's any validity to that, but just something I kind of notice.
Yeah, I would agree with that because yeah, obviously golf the ball's not moving, so they can overthink it. And then if you've got like parents kind of overcoaching and telling them to do certain things, then they just get in their own way. So especially with younger kids, it's good to just play fun games where it's kind of like a external focus and they're trying to hit a ball like over something or under something, and they can figure it out on their own. And kids are smart; they'll figure it out like super fast because it's the same. I'll tell parents that you never taught your kid how to walk; they just done it, and they couldn't talk or
Yeah.
anything at that point, and were much younger. So if you put a club in their hands and give them a task, they'll figure it out if they do it enough. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. It's more natural then too. I think, you start getting overcoached at a young age. You haven't played other sports. You create habits which probably are not beneficial to you, and then they're harder to break down the road. So I agree with that. If you had to verbalize kind of like a structure, system, method for a kid and their parent, starting, I mean, what's the earliest you start working with kids?
I usually start at 7 years old at the youngest. You'd be amazed how many emails I get from parents of 3 year olds that want to get their kids
Oh my
formal golf
goodness.
instruction is just crazy. And I, I don't do it just because I don't believe in it. But yeah, usually 7, and I'm obviously a big proponent of TPI. So looking at like the long term athletic development model, when they're 7, if they're playing like once a week, that's great. And then playing multiple sports, and then kind of as they grow, they're hitting each of their kind of their windows. So you'd be looking at there's 4 main windows. The first two, so between like 4 and 8 years old is speed one. So we're looking at
Yeah.
just developing speed through, they could be just running, playing soccer, throwing things fast, just being kids basically that just outside being athletic. And then when they are kind of coming into their early teens is the speed two window. And that's when kind of for girls it's a little bit earlier than boys because they develop sooner, but
Yeah.
they want to hit that window. And then after they kind of hit that peak is when testosterone goes up. So you want to be looking at strength training, and that's completely safe for kids at that age. Before then, I would kind of be doing more like body weight stuff. But as they come into their early teens after that speed two window, they can start doing strength. And then in their late teens, they can kind of do more power development. So like more technical stuff like Olympic lifts and things like that. Um,
Yeah.
but as they go through that kind of growth, the volume gradually steps up and they're not just getting thrown in at the deep end. So the golf volume would start low, and then kind of as they go through their years, they would increase the volume and then decrease other sports.
Right. So 7 years old, good time to start looking at formal instruction. Keep it light, kind of once a week. Gradually start building. Understand where they're at developmentally, when to introduce speed windows, and then when it becomes more a shift into power. Really important stuff that a lot of parents don't know. I know you and I went through the TPI process, and that has been extremely beneficial to my coaching, and it seems like with you too. And you were just telling me about, I didn't catch this video last night yet, but a video you saw on TPI about a 13-year-old going through the TPI process. Do you mind kind of letting the audience know about that, where they could find that, and how it's potentially helpful to them understanding, how this development process works?
Yep, so they released it yesterday. I think it's on their YouTube channel and there's little clips on Instagram. So, but they've been doing a lot with the professionals recently and just going through the whole TPI, the initial assessment, and then the power assessments, and then all the force plate stuff and all that technology. But the one last night caught my eye because it was a 13-year-old girl from Dubai, I believe. I think she finished second at the World Championships this past year. And I thought it was really interesting because I coach some girls that are in that exact same age group and played in that tournament. So it was good to see the differences.
Yeah.
And I sent it to some of the parents because they were kind of the same, and the girls that I coached didn't do as well in that tournament, but it was just to show them that, look, it doesn't really mean anything, because Greg Rose at TPI quickly pointed out at the end of that video that I think they asked him how many tournaments she should be playing, because she was playing like 20 plus tournaments a year, like big ones. And he immediately said, like, stop doing that many and work more on your strength, because you're going to break down and you're not going to hit your peak potential, or you're going to get injured or something if you're just golf, golf, golf at this age. Um, and the phrase that he used that I thought was really good is early right equals early rotten. So if you're trying to be the best 10, 11, 12-year-old on the planet, you're going to give up some stuff when you're older. And he asked him, would you rather win the 13-year-old girl age group world championships, or would you rather win an LPGA event? And of course, it's an LPGA event. So, and if you ask people like who won the under nines championship, world championship 3 years ago, nobody knows. Who won the under
Right.
15s last year or the year
Yes.
before? You don't know. So ultimately, it
It's
doesn't
so
matter.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up. I mean, I've had some parents, over the years, and it's just from a lack of, they don't know any better. So they're
Mhm.
just doing what they think is right. But we talk about this. I said, I'm getting a million texts from like a 9-hole like US kids tournament for like 10, 11, 12-year-old. And I'm like, oh my guys, it's like nobody, I don't mean to be rude or mean, but like this in the big scheme of things, this doesn't matter. Like we're building for long-term development. Like, so you have those parents of these young kids, and their kids upset, their kids crying, they don't know what to do. There's a lot of emotions, and so the parents kind of learning how to manage their kids and understand like what's appropriate and what is important. And in the moment, a 9-hole, 18-hole US kids tournament, 10, 11, 12 years old, even if it's worlds, it's not really the big, in the big scheme of things. We're preparing for well down the road. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I have a conversation with my students and my parents on exactly that topic all the time. So it's great that they could hear it from you, and even more exciting to hear that from Greg Rose, because he obviously is super skilled and knows what he's doing in junior golf development. So really, really good stuff for the kids and the parents to hear. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think the other thing on that is, and I tell juniors this all the time, when you're like 12, 13, and you're shooting like even par and under par every time, you can't get much better than that. So,
Yeah.
but if you're the junior that's, say you're shooting in the 80s or 90s when you're early teens, and you're playing against that junior that's shooting under par, in 4 years' time, how are you going to feel if you're shooting under par or even and they're the exact same? And how are they going to feel? I can guarantee the one that's improved more is going to take more confidence from that. Um, and the one that's kind of been shooting the same scores is going to panic because they're looking at somebody that they were beaten by 15, 20 shots a few years ago is now overtaking them. So I think there's actually an advantage in not being the best at that age as long as you're working towards it at an older age.
Yes, yeah, there's you learn how to lose better. So those kids
Yeah.
that are dominating at an early age and like when those other kids catch up, they have a much harder time mentally dealing with that. And so they never learned how to lose. And there is so much losing with golf. It's not like these other sports where one team wins, one team loses every week. It's an individual sport with, depending on what division and how deep the tournament is, there could be up to over hundreds of kids in these big tournaments. And, on a regular basis, you're dealing with 15, 20, 30 kids in your age group. So one winner walks away and then you've got, the rest are essentially losing. And so you've got to be able to learn how to lose. And you're playing the game within yourself, right? Of the game of self-improvement. So where were you at, today? What is your scoring average? Where are your stats? And then, 3, 6, 9 months, 1 year from now, are you improving or not? And I think that's where kids and parents need to focus on instead of constantly comparing themselves to their neighbor, their friend, their peer, their teammate. I see that a lot. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's obviously just the way the world is now, especially like social media. You're going to look at like what everybody's doing and how good things look. But for juniors, it's really tough because I mean they're all developing at different rates as well. So you could have two 13-year-olds that one's grown quickly and developed quickly and they're really like 16, 17. The other one's like 8. And I can think of
Yeah.
that with a couple students that I've got, they're both the same age and one's like a foot taller than the other one. And it's not a fair fight, but that's unfortunately how junior development is. So I think if you are like a late developer, it's just understanding that and that it's fine. It'll kind of even out eventually as long as you keep like working on yourself and not comparing yourself is the best thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you can't help when you're going to hit that growth spurt or develop, but if you are going through the necessary training and steps and you're working with a coach like yourself or here at the academy, and you have that guidance, we know kind of how to train those kids and develop them, and then also to make sure, mentally that they're staying in the right place with it. So, I know you specialize in junior golf development with not only the skill development, but you're also, a strong focus on the physicality and the mental component of it. Talk to us and to the kids and the parents out there about how important that is and how much time are you spending on those areas with developing your juniors?
So the physical side, we just started like last week going into the winter season. We done the TPI power test, so they'll get workout plans through the winter and then we'll retest them. And then mental side, I mean, it's something I'm always trying to touch on in every lesson. Because I think like confidence is like the number one thing that most golfers need. And just like the biggest thing I would see that juniors do wrong is just like the negative self-talk, and always beating themselves up if they play bad. So just really like hammering that and that they need to be positive. They can't really fail. They can only learn from their experiences and just kind of every tournament looking back on it and not getting upset about it if they didn't play good, rather thinking, right, what can I do better next time and what can they change in their routines or practice that can help them get to that next step.
Right. Yeah, we use Dawn Woodard at Judgment Matters, and she has an assessment, and it's not a personality test. It's not a disc, it's not a Myers-Briggs, it's nothing like that. It's a judgment-based index, so it evaluates how like your decision making and why you make the decisions you do and what kind of influences that, and it evaluates your self side and your work side. And so for the juniors, their work side is their school and their golf development. And so we've used that and it's helped me tremendously as a coach. It's helped the students understand themselves better. And probably the most important thing is it helped the parents understand how to communicate to their kids. Because what, I don't know if you see this, but a lot of times, and what I've learned through kind of working with Dawn and her helping and coaching me is juniors are going to, parents have a strong influence on their kids. And when they're young, they're going to think and do and behave much like their parents and how they've guided them. But then as they start approaching their teenage years, they start, they're their own person. They have their own way of doing things. And we see a lot of conflict because I see it more with dads, like dads who are involved with the junior golf development and they're at the tournaments and that they've got a lot of feedback after the rounds, is they might think things should be done this way. And then, their kid, even though it's their offspring, thinks an entirely different way. And so there gets to be some conflicts out there. And so what Dawn has been extremely beneficial in doing is helping the parents understand what their kid needs and how to be communicated to because they think differently. They're driven by different motives. And then also help the kid with how to manage themselves. And so that when they are kind of going off track or, they're getting emotional or upset or, they're feeling down on themselves or their self-talk is bad, they have tools to help manage themselves to kind of get them back up for performance. And I mean, Dawn has been extremely beneficial in what we do, and she works remotely. So she has clients throughout the country. She works with a lot of top college teams, as well as a lot of top junior players, as well as businesses and CEOs. So it can apply to anyone because your mindset and your mental, it doesn't matter if you're a golfer, if you're an athlete, if you're a parent, if you're a student, if you're a CEO of a company, you have to have a strong mindset and mental game. So it's been really beneficial to us. But yeah, like you said, every day is different strategies to help improve that. So
Yeah, that's really good. Especially I think like for parents understanding their kids more on the golf terms. And I think it kind of leads into giving them like more ownership. Because I think that would be one of the main things that I'll see that stops juniors developing is the parent takes more ownership than the kid, and they ultimately, as they get older, they don't know how to cope with certain things. So I've seen students before. I'll ask the student a question, and the dad answers, and then you ask them again, and the dad answers, and it's like they can't make their own decisions. Which like I'm sure a lot of coaches see that, and it's kind
oh
of
yeah.
it's we laugh about it, but at the same time, it's when they are under pressure in a big tournament, you can guarantee they don't know how to deal with it because their parents have done everything for them. So yeah, I think the best junior golfers, they take like complete ownership, and the parents supportive, but they don't like overstep um
Yeah.
the development or their juniors like taking control of the situation.
What's your process to that? Because what I do here is my juniors that are in academy, not private lessons, but like the ones I see, regularly throughout the week. We have a group chat and I only let the kids in it. And so I try to, so as soon as they have a cell phone, for me, that's when their accountability goes up. And so I communicate to the kids like, hey, we're meeting today here, we're doing this, or bring your, 3 clubs today, like whatever it is, instead of sending a mass email to the parents, I tell them up front when they join my program, like I'm going to be communicating with the kids because I want them to take ownership and be involved in their process and their journey. If we're doing everything for them, we're not really helping them out. We're actually doing something to potentially hold them back. So that's what we do here. What do you like? What's your in terms of when that accountability and ownership should start taking place, or how do you go about it with your students?
I'm kind of the exact same as you. Like early teens, it's yeah, when they're starting on their phone and stuff. I use Coach Now for a lot of the communication. So the parents are in there, they can see everything. But if the student has like certain tasks, so for example, I'll give them practice plans like Google Sheets, and each week they need to go in and log what they've done. It's super simple because everybody sees it. The next time they're at a lesson, I can pull it up if they've not done anything. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that accountability wise, that's been helping. But yeah, I've been lucky that, I mean, 99% of the parents of my students are really good. You do obviously get some times where a parent is like doing everything for them. If it gets to the
Yeah.
point, I'll actually be very honest with them and tell them I know your heart's in the right place and you're trying to help, but ultimately it's going to hurt
Yeah.
them. Because no, obviously every parent wants their kid to do good. It's just how they're supporting them
Yeah.
with it. And it's the same, it goes both ways. Like I see juniors that get upset at their parents and they think that their parents are trying to like sabotage them. And it's like, no, they're
Yeah.
actually trying to help when they tell you stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think if they just talk to each other and everybody communicates, then it's fine.
I've seen parents really improving. Like if you go back 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would say I thought it was going to be a crisis. Like I was like, this is, I'm traveling to tournaments. It's not just my students. I'm seeing like talking just globally, like other parents, and it was um it was kind of scary, like to see how involved dads are yelling at little girls on the range. Like it's crazy what you see. And then, I think throughout the years, like at least right now at my academy, I agree. I think we have 99% of the parents are incredible now. And I think they are wanting to develop, like they want to get better. They want to do the right thing. Nobody wants to do anything that's going to, feel like you're going to hinder your child from growing and developing. I think a lot of it is just a lack of education, like you only know what you know. And so I think throughout the years, there's not been a lot of resources for parents on what and how they should be doing junior golf tournaments. It's a totally different setting than a basketball game or a football game, like usually those games you're up in the stands, you're kind of far away. Golf, they're walking down the cart path. There's a lot of opportunities to say stuff to the kids. Kids have phones now. I'm seeing parent, like they're texting their kid while they're playing, telling them what they should do, how they should hit. And I'm like, the involvement level is crazy. And I think golf is a different sport than other sports, and it has allowed that. And so, I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've actually like I'll do like group programs and younger kids especially. I'll say, right, the parents are not allowed to come in to the group class because I remember a few years ago when I was at one academy, the parents were like in the class, like moving kids and trying to help them. So when I started my own thing, I was like, no, we're not doing that. You can help and be supportive out with the class, but yeah, just kind of setting boundaries because the kids like it more when they can make friends and they're not kind of being overshadowed. So yeah, I think just kind of setting that expectation at the start helps. But definitely, I think the parent education is a big part, and that's something I'm going to do more next year as well, just to kind of add more value. Because I think since COVID, there's more kids that are playing golf that have parents that don't play golf as well. So they have no idea
Yeah.
what's going on with like tournament sign-ups or how often they should be practicing, things like that. So yeah, I think there's a big space for parent education.
Yeah. Yeah, we're starting to do that. I have one set up, I think in a week or a couple weeks, but our mental performance coach, Coach Dawn, I'm going to have a Zoom call with the parents and the kids so she can do a little education, 20, 30-minute piece on a couple things, just what she does, how it helps, and then a couple of things that would help them as well. And then we use Dr. Greg. He is TPI physiotherapist with movement driven. So I incorporate that physical training into our Friday classes, and I'm going to have him talk to the parents too. So we're going to do like little education pieces for the parents as a group on a Zoom so that you can kind of get the message out to everyone and just help them with kind of understanding their role. It's a very important role. Like we love the parents. We want everyone on this team to succeed. So part of it is just, understanding what is your role? How do you help what are things to maybe avoid doing in this process. And I think most parents are open to hearing that. I think they like that kind of stuff. So just trying to create more opportunities and resources for the parents is going to be very helpful for junior golf development.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think the biggest thing for like parents as well is like just rewards the outcome. Not don't reward the outcomes, reward the effort. Sorry. So like just kind of being their best cheerleader. Don't get too negative in feedback or anything because the kids thinking that themselves if they play bad. So you don't need to kind of emphasize that. So it's just kind of always being there for them and uh keep rewarding the effort and the outcomes will come.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do, and learning a lot about that as a coach. I had to watch what I was saying over the years too, just to make sure you're not like just focusing on the score, like making sure like when they're playing, if they're fighting hard, out there, their body language is good. They're doing everything they can, teaching them what's in their control and what's not in their control. But, shoulders down, slow walking, pouting, that kind of stuff is in their control. So really trying to focus on that and making sure that that is the best that they can possibly exhibit every single day, every single round, every single shot, and versus, just the score. And so that is very, very important stuff. So I'm glad you brought that up. Question I have for you for junior golf development. What's your thoughts? And these are, just your opinion and maybe research you've done, looking at your groups in the development for different age groups, kind of what is the ratio and your thoughts on group instruction versus private instruction?
I prefer a combination, I think is best, obviously. But I do think even though golf is an individual sport, it's I'll have a lot of parents that are like, oh, I just want him or her to come individually. Um, but their goal is to play in college. Well, college is a team, so you're going to be in a
Yeah.
group. So if you're only doing individual, it's not gonna they're gonna get in for a shock when they're in college or high school. So it's I would say groups are good because it teaches them how to be around other kids, and it can push them to be better because then they've got accountability. They make friends that they can go play with. And I think that's like one of the big things that's I sound like an old man saying this, but it's not the same as it used to be. Like I remember going to play golf and I would just show up, meet my friends. There was no structure. It was just go like figure it out. And that you don't see that anymore as much.
Yeah.
You will at some clubs, but it's mainly structured practice nowadays. So I think having that group element keeps some of that kind of play, like structured play aspect to it. So I think groups are really important, especially if the junior wants to play high school golf and college golf. I do think
Yes.
individuals good to kind of focus on specific things, but overall, I think groups are more important.
Yeah, I would agree on that too. And I think the benefit of the group, like one, you're getting that social aspect. Golf, I mean, I know growing up, like I had the combination of being in an academy setting and then my individual practice days. And, when you're grinding it out there by yourself, it's not, you definitely have to be extremely self-motivated to do it. And luckily I had that. But for a lot of these kids, when they're around a group setting, it keeps it fun, it keeps them engaged. There's ways to create competitions out of it. So there's a lot of positives out of the group. And then in terms of like the way, I don't know how you do it, but we're able to work on full swing and short game and different topics because we have 3 hours together versus like a 1 hour private lesson. You're focusing on typically one specific technical detail or skill that you're trying to train. But when you have a 3 hour session, we're able to work on a lot more things. We're able to do it with competitions. We're able to go out on the course. And then I can bring in trainers who are training them. And so instead of them having to go out and individually, okay, I'm going to do private lessons that are a lot more expensive by the hour. Then I need to go pay for a trainer by the hour. It creates a great value. We've created a great value where the kids can have access to the course, a junior membership, They get training with me, TPI training, sports box, all that, video voiceovers. And then they also get workouts with Coach Ronnie. And then on Fridays, we do TPI specialized junior development with Dr. Greg. And so, like, to have that at the price that we charge, it's like, I don't think they understand like the value they're getting versus like typically everybody's, 175 to 200 per hour just to do these things. So I think you get more reps in, you get more social, and you get a better value.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, because it's like a one-stop shop. And I would always say like, because you'll get some people that say, "Oh, it's expensive," but compared to what, like you don't. It's there's a lot of value, and it's ultimately if they get a scholarship or something, it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's definitely the best model because then you're kind of hitting everything, and they're not having to kind of go different places to find all these different things. So you're getting, and then you're seeing them do everything, so you can see if there's something else that they need to work on, or
Yes, you can see how they're practicing too.
yeah,
Because when you're going through like a 1 hour lesson, you're trying to change a pattern, you're giving them stuff to work on. But then that in between time, how are they working on it? How often are they working on it? Are they missing a detail? Are they overtraining an area that, a lot of times with my juniors especially, like you can go over and explain, but like the details they're not as precise on. So, ball position gets off, weight distribution, spine angle, all these things. Then they've trained it. You don't see them for a few weeks. And, did it improve? Did it not? Maybe not as much as it would have if you'd seen them a few more times in between. But I'm also a big proponent on group, and there's a time and place for individual. And at least in our group setting, I spend individual time with each kid. So each kid I will work one-on-one on or one-on-one with within the group, and then I will rotate through the other kids. So then when I'm done with them, that's when they start implementing what they're supposed to be working on and practicing and drilling. So try to, like you said, best of both worlds, try to get it all in. But there's only so much time to develop these kids, like their windows, they're, depending on when they start and when they're trying to get ready for high school or college. It seems like a lot of time, but I don't know with you. Like I blink my eyes and the kids are like 3 years older and the time has gone by, and it's just like you're trying to get everything that they need in a really short amount of time.
yeah, yeah. It goes super fast. And you don't realize sometimes, but yeah, I always tell kids that like when they're freshman year that you've got a lot of time, but you don't have any time. Because some of them will kind of get complacent thinking, oh, I've got 4 years, but really they need to kind of be on it all the time from that point.
Yeah. Yeah, like we're training for long-term development. I want you to talk about long-term development, but like there's these little goals that we have in between. And for a lot of the kids, it's, first ones make that middle school golf team, then it's high school golf team, then it's, win FSGA or, I don't know what you guys have, what CGA. So, the evolution of how intense and those tournaments and how deep the fields are and just trying to elevate and rise to those to those levels. And then then you get to high school and most of the kids are trying to get recruited to play college golf. So those are some lofty goals that we have to kind of strive towards. And nowadays with how competitive it is, it's insane. So talk to us a little bit about the long-term development process. And, when you do get a student who is looking to get recruited for college, when should that process begin? And how does that maybe look different than, somebody who's just trying to play at the middle school or high school level?
Yeah. So as far as like the long-term development, I think it's always good to set a big goal at the beginning. And I've actually seen, I'll ask every student when they first come, when they're brand new, what their goal is, like long-term goal. And the majority say play college golf, and they're not very specific. Two students that come to mind that have kind of stood out to me, one when he was like 9 years old, he said he wanted to play for Stanford. and the other one said he wanted to be number one in the world, but he like fully believed it. And I was like, well, that's quite big. I've never heard that before. But that was a few years ago. And looking now, the one that said he wanted to play in Stanford has done very well. He shot mid 60s in multiple tournaments, won a lot of tournaments. The one that said he wanted to be number one in the world has shot 63 in a tournament and with a 27 back nine. So I do think there's something in it when you give yourself like a massive goal, it kind of pulls
Yeah.
you up a little bit. Whereas a lot of kids will just say, oh, I just want to play in college, and it's not specific enough. But then once you kind of get that in mind, your big goal, then it's like, right, how can you just day by day, week by week, chunk that down and mainly just focus on the process rather than that outcome then. And just kind of ask yourself, right, am I doing all the little things that makes me a little bit better week by week? And then that adds up. And I'll always tell kids if they get like frustrated after a bad tournament, they're they're only allowed to be upset if they put in all the work that they should have. And most of the time, if they played bad, it's because they didn't put in the work. So I think like the long term, they need to kind of just think, right, process rather than the outcome and just kind of work through it that way and do all the little boring things every day that's going to make them reach that.
Yeah. And that's for all junior development, or is that more specific to juniors who are trying to get recruited for college?
I would say, yeah, that's you can kind of use that, I think, for everything, but expectation management would be the big thing. It's like, yeah, for the ones that want to play college for sure, but I'll get some kids that they don't want to play in college, and that's completely fine. It's just kind of finding out what they want to do, what their goals are. And the big thing I'll kind of say to them is like, right, if you just want to be respectful or respectable when you play and play decent in high school, then here's the minimum that you need to do each week, and it might only be practice 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And that's completely fine. But as long as their expectations match what they're doing, then I think that's when it works out best.
Yeah, I agree with you. And managing expectations is, it's not just something that the juniors deal with. I see it all the time with adults too. And so, how do we do that? I mean, one of the ways we try to manage expectations is to set and create personal pars. So yeah, par is 72, but your personal par might be at this point in time, you're a young junior, maybe it's 85 you're shooting. So let's work on trying to get that down. And then everybody is, again, just trying to better themselves and not trying to compete against everybody else. There's a lot of outside factors and influences that can get in these guys' heads and affect how they train and the way they see things. So that's one way we try to manage it. But the other thing that is so important is you have no idea whether you're improving or not if you're not keeping good stats and record, keeping track of what's going on. And so we use Clipped here. What do you guys use anything or anything you recommend to kind of keep your stats on your kids and to see how much they're improving or what areas you need to train more at practice?
Yeah, so I have given all my kids kind of like the Google Sheets documents, and I'll just have them track like the Tiger Five and mental scorecard stuff. And then every time they play, I'll have them kind of log that, and then next time I see them in person, we'll kind of go over it. So we're being a bit more proactive in what we're working on. But
Yeah,
I think stats, like every single junior golfer should be doing that 100%. Um, Most don't, and they kind of think it's boring, but they would be
yeah,
very thankful if they did do it because it's going to help them. Because I think it's the same. I'm thinking of one student in particular. A few years ago, he would always come in, right? Can we work on irons? Can we work on irons? Ball striking, ball striking. And then I think I caddied for him at a tournament, and his putting was atrocious. And not once had he asked to work on putting. And
yeah,
for the next like 3 months, that was all we done. And then his scores came down like immediately. So I think there's like it's a subjective and objective. I think they might hit one, he maybe hit one bad iron shot and that's all he could remember. Whereas if he logged his stats and was like, oh, I actually hit most of the greens, and I was hitting it decently close, but I had like 40 putts, then he would see it black and white. Whereas I think they get caught up in like one or two shots that kind of get stuck in their brain and they think that's the
Yeah.
problem. So no, I
Yes.
think every single junior should be keeping stats. I'll keep bugging my juniors to do it. A lot of them get lazy and don't, but yeah, everybody should do it.
Yeah, that's what I like about Clipped because so and the kids if they get Arcos they put the sensors on their clubs, it automatically keeps their stats. So they don't have to go in and do the tedious whatever. They play their round, everything is like in the phone computed, and then all they have to do is, hit a button and it goes right into their Clip data. The Clipped organizes that in a way where it identifies what areas they need to work on, like what has more value to their scoring. And like you said, so you hit one shot out of bounds. You've done that once in 30 rounds, and they want to go beat drivers, and you're like typically, hey, like you're in the fairway 77% of the time, like, but that's what, they hyper focus on an area and it maybe doesn't affect them. So Clip has a way of taking that information and telling you what's important. And so like one of my students, Fiona, she just signed to go play at Cal State University Bakersfield in California next year. And when I got her the end of freshman year, freshman year of high school, her scores were mid to high 80s in like US kids level distances. And so we have just gradually, worked on chipping away. The first year I have with a player, I tell them I'm building their game and swing. So we're just hyper focused on getting that technique strong so it lasts long term. Because I've read, I don't know if I think it was on a podcast, but I heard in terms of junior golf development, where a player's positions are between the ages of 16 and 18 years old, for the most part, they're going to stay there. So it's really important to get those skills, like those positions, in place before you hit 16. Yeah, there's things you can change, but like your patterns are pretty well established at that point. And so, focus on building that player, getting the technique down that first year is really important. And then it's really looking at after that, then really getting into scoring and trying to get that. And so Fiona was, we were working on swing, 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 irons, irons, and it was important. It showed up in Clipped. It was 65% of her scoring had to do with her approach shots. So we spent every day like just working on iron technique, getting those positions, building power and speed. A lot of it too, she was not strong. And so when she has had long distances into the green, your approach, it puts a lot of stress on your approach shots, because now instead of a 8 or a 9 iron, you got a 6 iron or 5 iron coming in. That's a big difference, and that impacts your score. So strength training was really important. I got her with Dr. Greg. We got her stronger. She picked up 30 yards off the tee and about 2 club lengths with her irons, and that was our thing. And then her short game in between. Now, we've gotten that up to where it's and Clipped, it'll tell you based on, you can pick the category. So we pick a D1 college player average because a lot of those D1 schools are in Clips. So they have a lot of data to go off of. And so she's above D1 average level in short game and stuff. So those are cool things that we look at, and it keeps the kids positive too. And they like to engage. They're interactive in it. They pull it up. We're both looking at the same kind of stats. So that's been really helpful with our training, and for the kids too. So on days I don't see them, if they're practicing, like they know exactly what they need to be working on. And so one of the coolest things too, I got to show you this. And they keep improving, which I like. We've been using them for 2 years, and over those 2 years, they're constantly innovating and adding new kind of features. But I'm going to show you this. This is really, really cool. If it'll pull up. It has to do with putting. It's called enhanced putting. So it gives my players stats on different speed level greens. So their tendencies on slow greens, their tendencies on kind of mid-level greens, or mid-level speeds, and then their tendencies on fast greens. I don't know why it's not pulling up, but really cool stuff. And then their patterns on left to right breaking putts and right to left breaking putts. So we get all of this really cool data and can set up practices just for them. All right, so I'm going to see if you can kind of see this. But if we go to dashboard, so you get each kind of category of the player, approach, off the tee, around the greens, putting, and then their total player quality. So then when you click on each one, so Fiona's a 93 right now, and tour or college average is a 91. And then I can go down to her enhanced putting, and you can see where she has, I don't know if that'll show that, left to right bias, straight puts, speed control. She's more conservative or aggressive. So just really cool stuff that we can kind of narrow in and hone in on. And I think that's really elevated our practice sessions and for her. And it gives the kids confidence because if you're going in, I don't know if you see this, but you're going in and they're doing a lot of the same things. And a lot of times they do need a lot of the same training and practice things. But when you're able to kind of hone in on that and they buy into what they're working on, they're more inclined to not just go through the motions. They're really, hey, this is really important to my development, my scoring. Coaches are looking for this. So a lot of times, I tell them a lot of the college coaches are using clips. So getting the kids used to it in junior, like their junior development, then that transition to college, it's not as painstaking. Like I remember when I went to college and we had to do those handwritten golf stats. I
Yeah,
mean, it was miserable. Nobody wanted to do them, but they've made it so easy now and they've made it interactive and engaging. So it's a totally different world now with the stats. But this, I mean, I highly, highly recommend that. And we use that, and I have a discount code if anybody wants it, but
perfect.
um
Yeah,
we
and
have
now it's
made
actually
all this
you
stuff.
can that's great for like resume building as well because you can throw in all that stuff for college coaches and they can see how you've improved over the last few years. And
Yeah.
as you say, that gets you're going to be doing it in college regardless, so you
Yeah.
might as well start.
Yeah, it's not that expensive. I think they charge the kids if you do it month to month, it's like $25 a month, but if you pay for the year, they save. And then I think there's like 10% offs and stuff. So if you're only paying, $150 a month or a year or something for something like that, it's totally, totally worth it.
Yep.
So, but yeah, stats are super important. Um, we've talked a little bit about, burnout and stuff like that. And anything else to add on that and making sure the kids are developing the right way and not getting burnt out by the time, they get to college.
Yeah, I think always take like just building in breaks at certain points of the year. And then something I'll do with students is like have them write down like why they started playing golf in the first place and what their why is. And they can always think back to that because if they're just mindlessly practicing and forget why they're doing it, then it's not going to be good. So yeah, just remembering why you started playing it in the first place.
Yeah.
And if you're a parent of a junior, it needs to be the junior's idea that they wanted to start playing in the first place. Otherwise, they're gonna give it up at some point if it was your idea. So yeah, just thinking back why you done it, always remembering that as a junior golfer, because ultimately you started playing it and kept playing it for a reason. I've
Yeah.
never met somebody that liked golf and or didn't like it and just kept playing it because they didn't like it. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, just remembering why you started it and never forgetting that.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of to summarize that, it's play a bunch of sports as the kids are young, get them involved in a lot of different activities. Don't just hyper focus on one sport or just golf because that tends to lead to burnout down the road. And also it leads to injury. As we've talked about, like strength training is extremely important to the development process. And in terms of that combined, then social things, group setting training, really important to the social aspect. So you start integrating those things into their training, and then they're less likely to experience burnout. We, do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think on this, the athleticism, just a point, because speed training's all the rage right now, is don't just do speed training for the sake of it. So like what I like about like the TPI power stuff is based on their power testing, it's gonna tell us like what their like healthy ball speed would be. And if they
Yeah.
are like producing ball speed higher than what their power output is, they're probably gonna get injured.
Yeah.
So just knowing that stuff, because you don't want to have like somebody that's like can't handle the speed and then ultimately they get injured and they can't play. So don't just do like speed training just for the sake of it. Make sure you've got the right like foundation before you start doing that.
Now, if you had to speak to kind of parents and kids about, maybe they're on the fence about working out or training in that way, they're not really buying into it. What advice would you have to them in terms of the importance to junior golf development?
If well, if you want to play in college and professionally, it's going the way like basketball. Like if you're 7 foot tall, there's a 75% chance you'll play in the NBA. If your ball speed's like 180, there's probably going to be a high percent chance that you'll play in the tour. So you're not going to get that high without working out. You might get some people genetically that can get there, but 99% of people are going to have to gain strength and speed to do that. So I think if you want to be the best you can be, the way golf is going with courses getting longer, they're going to roll back the golf ball. They'll probably limit technology at some point. So it's going to be about how far you can hit it. And it's already like that right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's why like anybody can learn to hit it straight at any point
Yeah.
in their life. But you can't really learn how to like hit it far.
Yeah. Unless you're training it. And it's
Yeah.
so, like you said, I think it's such a separator now, and like it's starting earlier and earlier. So like before, kids would wait till they were in college to train, right? And that's a massive kind of jump, no strength training, and then at college, they hammer you. So then, you started seeing it in high school, and now like we're introducing and starting to do speed training things in a supervised way and manner, in those middle school years. So it's just I think people are figuring out the right way to train. And when I say people, I mean, experienced professionals. And then they're doing studies and stats, and then they're providing that to us, the coaches. So we know how important it is, and I see it on a day-to-day basis. My kids who are skipping the days that are workouts, and my kids who come 5 days a week and do all the training, I mean, they are way more developed than the other kids. It's no comparison. And so it's just, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And how often are you doing it? And I think learning and understanding that, not just going off, what parents think they should do, but reaching out to a coach or an experienced professional and getting that advice is really important. And so I think a lot of parents still, they're trying to do stuff on their own, or they're just focusing on private lessons. And at some point, like they think it works for them, but at some point, I think they're going to hit a major roadblock if you're not incorporating these other things into your training.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a team because like you look at like pros, they've got like 14 people on their teams. Like caddy, golf coach, chiropractor, they've got their
Oh yeah.
medical, they've got their physical therapist, they've got a nutritionist, they've got a mental coach, um, like everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you want
I
to get to that
value that.
level, yeah, you need all
Yeah.
that help.
The team. Yeah, and some of the things we incorporate at Academy, and then some we offer, like the professionals offer their services to my Academy students and parents at a discount, because it's an as needed base. But we have all those. I have a nutritionist, I have a therapist, I have, we talked about the mental performance coach, Dr. Greg. We have a trainer. So I've got a TPI chiropractor. as well as a TPI physiotherapist. So we've built an entire team here because I know, like, as a golf coach, I surely can't do it all myself. And it's really important to have all these people who are on the same mission as you, who want to help you, but they're also experienced and they know what they're doing. I think at this level of competitive junior golf, if people are experimenting and they're just trying to do it on their own and they're not working with professionals, that's definitely a risk you're taking. And you don't know down the road what kind of repercussions you might have from training incorrectly. Or worst case scenario, you get injured. I mean, if you're injured, that takes you out of the game. And at some point, you don't know how that's going to affect recruitment. So I take injury prevention extremely seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but talk about where junior golf is now, where it came from, over the last 20 years. Where do you see it going over the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Oof. Easy question. I think technology is just going to get bigger and bigger. So, but I would say like that's more so for the coach, and the coach can get to the answer quicker. Like I use force plates now, but I don't. I've had some parents that freak out because they're like, my kid's gonna not be able to swing because they see all these graphs, and I need to tell them like when you go for an MRI or whatever, you don't. The person doesn't need to read it; it's the doctor that reads it. So
Yeah,
it's the same thing. I think the technology is going to help, but I think that might help kids that are like analyzing their own swings and stuff. They'll be able to kind of get answers quicker that way, as more AI comes out. Still don't know where I'm at with AI because it's like scary. If I don't think it'll take over golf coaches because there's the personal relationship side that it just cannot and will
yeah,
not ever offer. Because I see all these things now where
yeah,
it's like the thing can read your swing and give you drills on what you need to work on, but it's
yeah.
yeah. So I don't see that taking over.
Yeah, I think people like to work with the coach based on that connection too. For a lot of people,
Mm,
there's some people that are tasked and it doesn't matter who coaches them, they just want the information. But there are a lot of people out there that relationship is important. But with the AI, so I have Sportsbox and that uses AI technology. Have you ever used that or seen it or?
yeah, yeah. We used it a couple years ago. I think when did it come out? Was it like 2 years ago or something?
Yeah. Yeah, I used
Yeah.
it then too, and then I got rid of it because initially I was like, this is way too much, and like the to sort through the information and the amount of time it was taking me, I couldn't,
Mm,
it wasn't beneficial to me in the lesson. So then I got rid of it. When I won the Troon Coach of the Year, I got a 1 year subscription, so I have it back, and they have introduced all these new kind of things and have made it so much easier. And so now I've been using it and like I take that and I combine like the TPI reports that I have with the kids. Then I combine it with what I'm seeing on Sportsbox. So like, a pelvic rotation. Like, all right, so for instance, one of my junior players yesterday, she's a slider. All right, she doesn't really load too good in the right side, and then she slides through. So I show her. It shows up on Sportsbox, red numbers, yellow numbers, green numbers, and these are based on tour player, averages. So I make sure I tell them, I say, look, like these are tour players, like you're not all gonna have all the green. And even if I put a tour player in here, they're gonna have some reds and yellows because everyone's kind of unique. So this is just a stock kind of average. So we do that. Then I take that, I get the numbers and the data. So yeah, I know they slide. The kid kind of understands it, but then when you show them a number and like here, like one of my players was sliding 6 inches past kind of where they were starting. So it's pretty excessive. In sports box, if you're in like 3.2 inches, you're in the green. So I told her, I said, look, we got to get, 3 inches. We're sliding too much. So if we rotate, we're not going to slide. So, but honestly, it starts in the backswing. So we've got to get you loaded a little better. So got her doing some drills. I said, go over there, do these drills, and then come back and we're going to test it again. Throw her on there. and she went from 6.0 to 3.2, went from red to green. So then she gets excited because she did it, she understands what she's doing, and then we have a metric to assess and let us know if it worked or not. And so it's been really beneficial in terms of training. And I was very much a 2D coach before. But it helps me help people way quicker with 3D technology. And then my ability to incorporate that with TPI and the physical exercises, and know specifically now when I have a player who slides, I give them this and right away I see an improvement. I have a player who's over the top, 10 minutes, it's done. I got a couple drills, have them doing it, and they're doing it, and numbers show, and ball flight changes. So it's really helped me help players a lot faster. And they love it. And you'd think you wouldn't see them as much, but they come back for more. Like they love it. They see you more, which is crazy because they're not, just out digging the dirt on the range, trying to figure it out after the lesson. Like they want to come in and see their numbers. They're like, oh, I can't wait to see where's my, pelvic rotation at today, or, how much am I sliding? So it's become kind of fun and engaging for my students, juniors and adults.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like you say, it makes us get to the answer quicker. I think it's almost like a game as well. So it's like gamifying it,
Yeah.
where like you're saying, if our number was like 6 inches, right, we need to get to three. It kind of gives them a goal. Whereas like in the past, it would be like just don't slide or do this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
because that was when I was growing up, that was my issue, was like sliding, and my coach was like, just don't slide. And so, and
Yeah.
then once I done like the TPI stuff, and that was what kind of got me on TPI, was when they screened me, they said you're gonna slide because your hips are tight. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think yeah, you definitely need to measure stuff, and then you can get to the answer much faster.
Yeah, it's just tying everything in together, and I think it's great if you have one or the other, but when you're able to have access to TPI and like a sports box and force plates, and you're able to know when and how, it doesn't mean every lesson you got to dump everything on each person, but there's different ways to check in, and once I do a couple sports box videos, or I do a couple, if I'm doing a 2D, we're not looking at it every swing. It's like, all right,
Hmm.
that gave us a metric, something to go off of. Now let's go train it. And then we come back and we test it. So, like you said, with technology, there's some people, they see their data and stats and it's just like a meltdown. They're constantly, that's all they think about. But it's like, no, let's just use it for like check-ins and see where we're at. And if it's working, if it's not working, if we need to do something else. Cause I've also noticed like you move one thing. It's kind of like Jenga. My analogy is Jenga, like you move one block here, but then a block in the back moves and comes
No,
out. And so you're just trying to make sure the whole thing doesn't tip over. But anytime you're working on the swing with a player, you're working on this one thing and you're trying to get them to load better in the right glute, but then, what's happening, somewhere else. And so you're just learning how to manage the player and their patterns. And so when you have data and metrics and technology to support that, it definitely, in my opinion, has helped tremendously. And the students love it.
yeah, and you can save all that if they're playing their best, like as a blueprint, and then you can, if they're struggling, they can always go back to that. You can see where they were at with
Yeah,
their
it's
numbers.
kind of like your coach now. It creates like a locker. So I do a voiceover video. Hey, I show them the numbers. Hey, here's your before, here's your after. I'm talking through, here's some tips and reminders, and then it gets stored. And then I write some notes and continue drills to do. And then it kind of posts like a social media post. And then each player has their own profile. And then so every time, they can look back at my voiceover in one spot with their notes. And so it's been really beneficial for them to reflect on too, because, after the lesson, um, I mean, I heard a stat where coaches don't follow, like, I think it was 1 in 8 coaches. I think Ted, when I had him on the podcast, he said 1 in 8 coaches follow up with a player after a lesson. I'm like, that's insane. Like, every time I have a lesson, I'm sending it's taken me an hour a player basically to go through all their videos, put together a summary, and send them a voiceover with their information. So It's really cool for them to have. I think it's different than when I was growing up, you know, like you had your lesson and then you never heard or saw from your coach
Yeah.
until you
It was
booked
like,
another
yeah,
one.
good luck for four
Yeah.
weeks, or then I'll see you next time.
Yeah, and you're like, I don't even remember what he said, you know, like
Yeah.
it's just like you just had to go off of what you could remember and listen to it in the lesson. So now it's just totally different. So I think in one way people were fearing technology that it was going to take their position, but I think it's only made it even better, and grown the game and improved, you know, getting more lessons. More people are wanting to get better when they see that kind of stuff versus trying to dig it out on the range themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that we've talked a lot. What I always like to kind of wrap it up with advice to players and parents. And I know we kind of talked about that, but if you were able to kind of, one kind of little note for both of them to leave with, what would your advice be?
Um, for parents, I'll kind of break it into two. For parents trying to get their juniors when they're first starting to play, um, kind of make sure it's their idea. So just kind of maybe when they ask to go to the driving range or something, take them, and then when they're having their most fun, pull them away. Don't let them get to the like boredom part.
Yeah.
And then just like always make it fun. So like so for example, it's funny. So my oldest son's 7, and this is where I'm starting to use him as an example because all the parents are like, "Oh, your son's really good at golf, or he must be playing golf all the time." And I'm like, "No, he's maybe touched the club 4 times, but he plays every other sport." Um, and they kind of look at me like I've got two heads. But now I can say, like, of
Yeah.
course I want him to be a good golfer. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, of course I want him to be a good golfer if he wants to play it. So there's the proof. If I'm doing that with my own son, like that's enough proof you'll ever need that that's the route to
Right.
take. I'm not like hammering him with it. And whenever he has to go play golf, I'll take him, and then it's like short bursts, and I'll pull him away, and he wants to go back more the next time. So yeah, so I would say like make it their idea, pull them away when they're having fun. For parents of like teenagers, like you mentioned earlier, they need to take like ownership when they like are in their early teens. It needs to be like their thing, and they've got complete ownership on it. Don't try and live vicariously through them because you never made it or had goals to play and never made it. Like it's their thing, it's not yours. And then for junior golfers, I would say again, I'm gonna sound like an old man when I say this. Most kids nowadays are lazy. You've got a massive opportunity if you just work hard because you've got all the technology you could ever need. Coaches are more knowledgeable than they've ever been. Um, you've got everything you need. Like, don't take it for granted. Just like put in the work and you'll get to where you want to be.
Oh, I know. I think the lazy comes with like addicted to their devices.
Yeah,
Like the kids who do have their phones, like even at practice, like I'm like, you got to put your phones away. Like
yeah.
they want to take a break and they just run over to the phones and it just becomes like an addiction.
I'll
And
see
so I
in
think,
tournaments now the because they obviously need to track their scores in tournaments. I'll see that they're liking stuff on Instagram, and I'm like, you're playing in a tournament and you're sitting scrolling on
oh my
Instagram, so
God.
it's like crazy. So yeah, I think if you
Uh,
can, I don't know, just be
yeah,
don't go with the
it's
flow
so
of like
bad.
normal teenagers. Like try and like think about what would separate you from everybody else.
Yes, the self-discipline to be able to separate and just like when you go play, like, tell mom and dad, like, hey, I'm gonna go play, because some of them will be like, well, my mom or dad's texting me. And I'm like, well, let's educate the parents, like, let them play and practice without like texting them all throughout practice, and get them in the habit of like, my phone is turning off. Like, if there's an emergency, we'll figure out a way to reach me, but like, trying to be more present in what they're doing and not so distracted by their phones and social media while they're trying to, prepare is really important. And I think that alone, if a kid could exhibit that, it's going to bleed into other areas so positively. And like that just by itself is probably a super recruitable trait for coaches, is to have, kids who are actually like, able to stay present and not so distracted by what's going on everywhere else. So that's a
Mhm.
great point. Thanks for bringing that one up. But yeah, no, Stuart, this has been incredible. I feel like, I mean, we touched on pathways for junior golf. We talked about the physical, the mental. We've talked about college golf, burnout, ways to avoid it. Um, did we miss anything?
I don't know, something somewhere. Golf's complicated, so yeah, I'm sure there's something.
Yeah. So it was great to have you on. I think this is really educational for the parents and the juniors. And I just love talking with you. And it's just great to connect with other coaches who kind of share a similar passion and a similar way of developing their players. So I always enjoy connecting with you. So hopefully I'll see you at the show.
Possibly. I don't know. I was at a couple
Awesome.
seminars, semester summits the last month, so I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. I got some PGA points to catch up on, so I will be there for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm the same.
So awesome. Well, thanks again.
Awesome. Thank
And
you very much for
hey, how kids and parents, if they want to connect with you, if you don't mind, just shouting out your website and your
um
social media handles.
I'm mainly on Instagram. I tried TikTok. I don't know how to do that.
Uh,
But sm.golf is my Instagram, and then Phenom Golf Lab is like the one for the new facility. But yeah, that's
Phenom
probably the
Golf
easiest way.
Lab
Yep.
and SM. Got it. Awesome. Cool. And I will put that in the description. So if people want to reach out and connect with you, they're able to follow you and see what you got. Stuart's got an amazing Instagram page, a lot of information out there for development, simple tips for not only the parents but the kids as well. So I love what you're doing with that. And so definitely if you have an Instagram account, definitely follow Stuart. So
Thank you.
thanks
Thanks
again,
for having
Stuart.
me. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.